is a vast and fascinating... Space rocks. Our solar system is a vast and fascinating place. Between Mars and Jupiter, we find the asteroid belt. Due to the mighty gravitational effects of Jupiter, these chunks of rock and metal couldn't come together to form a planet, and instead made up a solar junkyard of sorts. This is a crowded place to be an asteroid. Sometimes they collide with each other and get knocked off course, and even out of the belt altogether on a very different journey through the solar system. There are lots of names associated with space rocks, so what's the difference? Well, the bigger rocks are called asteroids. The smaller are meteoroids. And when they fly through the Earth's atmosphere, they're called meteors. If they manage to survive their burning descent through our atmosphere and land on Earth, we call them meteorites. Some meteorites contain iron, which makes them very dense, dark, and magnetic. They are the oldest thing you could ever touch, as they are the same age as the solar system. The gas giant Jupiter marks a boundary in the solar system called the snowline, beyond which objects contain a lot of ice. Past the other three gas giants, we find a huge ring of ice chunks large and small called the Kuiper Belt, where the dwarf planet Pluto lives. Even more of these ancient, dirty snowballs exist in a huge bubble called the Oort cloud. These icy objects can get bumped off course sometimes to become comets that journey past the planets towards the sun. Some collide with other objects and get smashed to bits. Others head towards the sun and form long, beautiful tails as their icy surfaces warm up. Here they will either fall into the sun, never to be seen again, or they will survive and speed back home beyond the snow line. Here on Earth, we are treated to spectacular natural firework displays in the sky from orbiting comets. As they get close to the sun, they burp, splutter, and crumble, leaving behind a trail of debris. At certain times of the year, the Earth plows through these trails and bits of comet flare up as they fly through our sky and become meteors. The early Earth was hit by thousands of comets and asteroids. It is thought they brought water to our world. Comets may have also brought the ingredients of life to the Earth, and the European Rosetta mission could help us unlock secrets about the origins of life on our planet.
All right. Hi, everybody. Sorry for the late start. This is Shen Ge, your host for SG2 on Space, episode number 34. Here on the lovely Action One Media Group studio. Action One Media, of course, you can go to the website at www.weara1.com. Follow me at facebook.com/The Shen Show, TheShenshow, and on YouTube, SG2 on Space. That's the name of the show. So you can find SG2 on Space either on my own YouTube channel, which is youtube.com/u/cast725, or you can go on Action One Media's YouTube page. But in any case, so as you saw from the intro, you probably know that, hey, we're going to talk some stuff about space rocks today, all right? By space rocks, I'm actually also going to include the moon in there, because that seems to be a prime target these days. So recently, let's start out with the supposed Chinese and / NASA possibly moon race. So there was an article on Politico.com actually pretty recently this week regarding whether China and NASA is having a race. And guess what? You know, there's a clear difference between the two, right? So some of you guys may be thinking, okay, you know what? We already landed on the moon. What's a big deal, right? Well, the big deal is that was a one-time thing. We were like, we won the moon race. We're done. We're not. I mean, it's 12 people have walked on the moon in total, all American men. And since then, nobody else has walked on there. But here's the deal, right? This is the going back to the moon, or going back to the moon to stay arena is getting rather crowded. So, and not just China, but India is planning its own mission to the moon's south pole later this summer, and expects to send an orbital, a lander, and a rover as a trial run for then sending humans to the moon within 3 years. Japan has actually teamed up with Toyota, the car maker, to build a lunar rover, which is pretty cool. And as you probably have heard me say at least 5 times, Israel has sent a privately funded robot to the moon this spring, the Berenstain, and it failed. Unfortunately, it crashed in the surface, but I'm sure they're already working on a second attempt. And Russia, I'm not exactly sure when they're going to do this, but they did say that they want to build a lunar colony. Perhaps the most ambitious out of these, though, is China. So China, as I've mentioned before, currently has the Chang'e 4 lander on the far side of the moon, which has never been done before. There has never been a lander on the far side of the moon. And it also has a little rover, and it's doing its thing, right? So it's exploring, but what it's doing is that it's exploring a potential future spot for settlement, right? Since the poles are good because it has ice and you can extract water from it, which obviously you could use for life. People need water, right? Or water is actually useful for a whole bunch of reasons. But China is not only doing its robotic program, it's stepping up its human spaceflight program as well, and it wants a permanent Chinese settlement on the moon by 2030. Okay? So, of course, America is not standing idly by. Okay, so Trump has said, ignore Trump's tweet from last week, which was really confusing, about how the moon's part of Mars or whatever. Okay, ignoring that, currently NASA has a directive to go back to the moon by 2024, right? Originally, it was to go back by 2028. Now, given the urgency, it wants to get it done earlier by 2024. However, there's an issue here. The major issue is not so much of the technical aspects, which we've done this once before. We have better technology now. We know how to do it. All right. The question here is, what is NASA's mission, right? This has been a persistent issue with NASA, because NASA was formed predominantly to do science. And these other countries, okay, so I'll just use China as an example, wants to go back for commercial reasons, right? Or for geopolitical reasons, which NASA was not designed to do. Now, in both numbers as well as achievements, U.S. is still the dominant player by far. I mean, we have an active roster of 39 astronauts, active roster, okay, which is larger than any other nations. We have like many science exploration programs, okay? And we've partnered with pretty much every major nation in the world, except for China, which is not part of this. Yeah, because China would steal secrets and you can't partner with them. All right. So, crucially, the U.S. also has a burgeoning private space industry, notably, for instance, SpaceX or Jeff Bezos' Blue Origin, right? So those are the two most well-known ones. And they want to go to the moon, all right? And SpaceX actually wants to go to Mars eventually. However, here's the thing, right? China has an advantage in that its leaders see the ambitions on Earth. Chinese leaders see the ambitions on Earth as well as space as linked together. Okay, so space is not this separate thing just to go explore and That's it, right? So here in America, when you talk about space, like people think it's cool, but not necessarily. It's something the government is like, hey, this is like, we have a space dream or whatever, or they're not putting the money there sometimes, right? There's not that kind of direct focus goal. So Chinese leaders, however, refer it unapologetically as the spirit of aerospace and the space dream. So as the head of the Chinese lunar program said last year, he said, the universe is an ocean. I'm sure it sounds much more poetic in Chinese, and I really need to actually note to self, identify the original Chinese in which he said it. In which case, if I say it, nobody will understand me, but that's fine. All right, so in English, it's the universe is an ocean, the moon is the Diaoyu Islands, Mars is Huangyan Island. Okay, and those are islands in the South China Sea, right, which China is laying claim to. So basically saying, hey, we are going to expand and we're going to start colonizing. So That's clearly a different kind of goal than what NASA is doing, right? So, um, China's unique compared to. I wouldn't say it's unique, but it's different. Its space program is different from America's, in that how much you spend on it, how much they spend, is not known exactly because it's wrapped up with a military budget. Okay. So now it is estimated that China spent $8 billion last year on the space program. That's less than half of what NASA gets, but you can't really compare the two because NASA spends a lot of it on science missions. All right, and China proportionally may not be that high for that. So so it's kind of hard to compare, right? Yeah. Um, any case, so China's main focus, as you can probably tell, is commercial and geopolitical roles. So let's see, compare with NASA. What does NASA exactly want to do here? So NASA plans to spend about $7 billion of its $21 billion budget. That's for the latest budget request, right? On science. Also requested another $5 billion. It requested $5 billion, not another. It requested $5 billion for human exploration. Now, even the most optimistic person, if you look at the numbers, realizes that you need more than $5 billion for human exploration if you want to get people on the moon by 2024. All right. So, what's going to happen? I mean, as Brendan Stein, the NASA administrator, had said, we're going to need additional means. I don't think anyone can take this level of commitment seriously unless there are additional means. And he's referring to the administration's announcement of the 2024 boots on the ground moon goal. So not clear where this additional means will be coming from. So, in May 2019, basically last month, it asked for White House asked Congress for another $1.6 billion for next year, kind of as a quote unquote down payment for the 2024 goal. But honestly, that's not enough to cover the whole cost. So then you got people, not going to get political here, but you do have certain people, for instance, certain representatives who has downplayed the importance of returning to the moon and instead stresses, say, NASA's science portfolio. For instance, Representative Eddie Bernice Johnson, all right, who said the simple truth is that we are not in a space race to get to the moon. We won that race a half century ago. And then she also continued, using outdated Cold War rhetoric about an adversary seizing the lunar strategic high ground only begs the question of why, if that's the vice president's fear, the Department of Defense, with its more than $700 billion budget request, doesn't seem to share that fear and isn't tasked with preventing it from coming to pass. Okay, I mean, I don't know what the Department of Defense is doing. Who knows? Maybe they have their own lunar plans. I'm not going to speculate there. But point is, I still think, I wouldn't call it a race. This is my take on it. But I would say it is important that we get a human presence there. If nothing else, I mean, I think even coming from the science perspective, there's way more you can do with humans than robots, okay? So if you have a permanent lunar settlement, you can do a lot more science than if you just send robots periodically. I mean, that's just a fact. Sure, the initial investment will be greater, but ultimately it pays off. So, I mean, it's just logical. So, who knows what will happen, though? It's not, what's the saying? No bucks, no Buck Rogers probably applies here. So China clearly has a long-term strategic goal and is very focused. So we need to be aware of that. So, speaking of, so she says about climate change, all that. I was going to talk about a little bit, but let's skip over that for now. If we have the time, I like to go back to that because climate change to me is also quite important. But we're here to tell you about space rocks, all right? So climate change, if we have enough time, we'll go to it. But space rocks, all right. So let's go to the science part of space rocks. All right, so apparently there's an anomaly on the lunar South Pole, all right? So lunar South Pole, the South Pole Aitken Basin is the largest crater in the solar system, probably caused by a gigantic asteroid that hit it a long time ago. All right, now there's something really, besides known as the largest crater in the solar system, there's something really weird about the South Pole Aitken Basin on the moon. Um, it's anomalous in that Okay, by the way, I'll just tell you this data comes from NASA's Gravity Recovery Interior Laboratory, GRAIL, and Lunar Reconnaissance Orbiter missions. So scientists combined the two sets of data, and they saw a mismatch between the surface topography and the gravitational tug of the moon. All right, so Peter B. James, a geologist at Baylor University in Texas, said this. Imagine taking a pile of metal 5 times larger than the Big Island, Hawaii. Okay, so imagine Hawaii, right? 5 times larger. Pile of metal 5 times larger than that, and burying it underground. That's roughly how much unexpected mass we detected. So, yeah. So this crater is 1,240 miles, so 2,000 kilometers across the far side of the moon. So, and it's probably created like, okay, I said a long time ago, but to be more specific, about 4 billion years ago, okay? So, the science team, they saw an increase from the data in the gravitational tug of the moon, roughly lining up with the neighborhood of the South Pole Aitken Basin. So the extra mass, more mass, more gravity, right? So the extra mass is possibly from the metal of the asteroid that formed this crater, and it's still buried underground. Can you imagine that? That's kind of cool, I thought. So another possible explanation for the anomaly is that the area is rich in oxides. So that could be from the moon's ancient magma cooling and solidifying. Okay, so this mass anomaly is really weird. It's located about 186 miles, so 300 kilometers down. So that's kind of interesting. So what's down there? Is it giant metal pieces from an asteroid, metallic asteroid? Is it from the formation of the moon? The moon's ancient magma ocean cooled and solidified? Or, okay, I'm just going to throw this out there because I always do. Some alien underground base. There you go. And it's made of metal. And it's gigantic. And that's what's causing the gravitational anomaly. Yes, that's it. I'm kind of kidding. I think it's most likely the asteroid's remnants. All right. So, but anyways, you guys want to read more about it? Published April 5th in the Journal of Geophysical Research Letters for you all nerds out there who likes to read up on real data, versus me summarizing. Okay. So another thing that's interesting, moving on to, the asteroid Ceres, C-E-R-E-S, Ceres. Ceres is an asteroid. It is actually the largest asteroid in the asteroid belt. All right, largest body in the asteroid belt. Okay, so surprisingly enough, we actually have a good bit of information on it. So between 2015 and 2018. NASA's Dawn spacecraft actually visited the dwarf planet, and okay, so asteroids are some of the oldest things in our solar system. Okay, so by studying it, we could actually it helps us understand how solar systems are formed, right? Since asteroids, unlike Earth, say, it didn't go through geological transformations. There was no active volcanoes. It's not like there's that much that disturbed it, that hit it. So there's no erosion. So in other words, we can literally look to the dawn of the beginning of the solar system. Well, at least, near the beginning. Okay, so we are starting to see how strange Ceres actually is, C-E-R-E-S. One of the most shocking findings that Dawn, the spacecraft, found is a volcano Ahuna Mons, a feature that seems kind of out of place on this really tiny world, right? So yes, that's getting that serious right there. So it's like Ahuna Mons rises 2.5 miles from the surface of Ceres. So you got this volcano on an asteroid, basically, right? Its sides are smooth and featureless. So that means the volcano has formed recently and hasn't been there long enough to be hit with craters, just like the rest of Ceres' surface is filled with craters. So apparently, this scientists say the volcano is formed when a bubble of mud, salt water, and rock formed up from the center of Ceres. and then the bubble burst through a weak point and then formed this volcano. All right, Ahuna Mas. So in other words, think of it as a giant mud volcano. How funny is that? I find that kind of cool. So it's now Sirius has no atmosphere, so once the slurry of like mud and rock and brine went up the surface, it immediately hit the cold of space and then solidified into that shape. Okay, so apparently the interior of, in this particular region at least, the interior of Sirius isn't solid and rigid, but instead is moving and partially fluid. So this bubble is a mixture of saline water and rock composition. So, anyways, so Sirius is primarily composed of siliceous rocks. So that's largely those rocks. I'm not a geologist. I'm just saying, what I've been reading is largely made of silicon dioxide, right? But there's also a considerable amount of water ice, right? So any case, scientists think that up to a quarter of Sirius's mass is actually ice or water. So what ended up happening is that its interior segregated into different layers. So heavier elements like iron sunk into the center, while lighter substances went up, rose. Okay, so what ends up happening is that radioactive decay of some of these elements inside the planet generates heat, kind of like what Earth does, right? And this heat generates bubbles of this brine, mud, and rock, which presses up against the solid crust from below and then injects it, So in any case, definitely, speaking of gravitational anomalies, like the South Polar Cape Basin, there's more mass, right? Same thing at Ahuna Mas, the gravitational anomaly there. There's more gravity there. So they found this out when Dawn flew over the volcano. The gravity accelerated the spacecraft and lowered its orbit a little bit, and so and it took a closer look. Scientists took a closer look and revealed there was a bulge, and hey, that's what's a bulge. A bulge is a giant volcano, guys. All right, so that's what's happening, right? Okay. Just a note, this type Sirius is cool, but it's not the only asteroid, or sometimes people call it dwarf planet, that has that. This type of cryovolcanism, I'm saying cryo because it's cold. It's not hot lava. When you think volcanoes, you might think hot lava. Well, it's not. Okay. This type of cryovolcanism is pretty widespread in the outer solar system. Some of Jupiter's and Saturn's moons, which there's a ton of, also show evidence of it, and so does Pluto. But what's cool is that those worlds are actually larger, right? Sirius is relatively small, as you saw in that picture. So what this means that even small objects, as long as they have sufficient size to have a heated up core, they can generate these cryovolcanoes, which is pretty interesting, right? And it can last for billions of years. Like Sirius is like 4.5 billion years old. So since its formation, it's still hot inside, which is kind of interesting. Maybe one day we'll tap into that energy source, assuming we settle on Sirius. That's possible. So I believe we need to go into break for a little bit. When we come back, let's talk about a 1 kilometer asteroid that smashed into Scotland. How fun is that? And then some other cool stuff NASA is doing.
Some of the other things you got going on.
Absolutely. So thank you for having me. I feel like I'm in the presence of like celebrity. Y'all real fans.
It's just the shades, man. It's the shades.
So I think like 2000.
Put your money where your community is. Get in the action. Action 1. Independent thinkers working together. Inspiring action in media. Get in the action. Inspire today. Join us by being a sponsor at weareA1.com.
growing up as a black kid in New Jersey, all I ever wanted to do was be a pro athlete. All of my role models were black athletes. And every time I would stare out the window, look at the sky, and wonder what I'd be in the future, it always had to do with me catching some crazy football and scoring a touchdown. When it came to the point that I was told that I would not be able to play on an organized sports team for the rest of my life, it was something that I really didn't even know how to stomach in the moment. And I remember walking out of my cardiologist's office and just sitting in the hallway and breaking down for a few minutes just because it was something that I just couldn't plan for and couldn't account for. And I realized that in that moment, my entire life was going to be changed. And all of those dreams and hopes and aspirations that I had were going to go out of the window.
Man, you still here? Go on and subscribe.
Get into action.
Yo, we back at it again, baby.
What?
Get into action.
3.
Get into action.
Tell me what is the deal, tell me what is the deal.
So I challenge you today to start strong.
I ain't seen you.
Get into action.
Tell me what is the deal. Cause I'm calling for you.
Get into action.
Can you feel that? Yeah. See, I'm calling for you. Can you feel that? Yeah. See, I'm
Back. You're listening to SG2 on Space, episode number 34. This is your host, Shen Ge, and this is the only weekly space radio show here in Houston, Texas. Viewable anywhere in the world at www.weara1.com, as well as on YouTube, SG2 on Space. You can look it up. All right. Actual media, as noted. So, before we went on break, I was talking about first of all, the special announcement, the possible Chinese NASA moon race, as well as some other countries which are engaged in going back to the moon to put humans there, not just robots. Talked about, and this episode, by the way, is focused on space rocks and exploration. So that entails my perspective, the moon, as well as any other rocky body. Also there's an anomaly on the moon's south pole, so probably due to some metal from asteroid that hit the moon's basin a while ago, a couple billion years ago to be exact. And then how strange Ceres is, CERES, the largest asteroid in the asteroid belt. It has a giant mud volcano apparently, and it probably comes from an interior core that's still active, due to the fact that some of these elements are radioactive and it's releasing heat. So, and kind of bursts through the crust and has basically creates a volcano. All right, which is kind of interesting. Now back to Earth. So in 2008, this is about. Okay, well I'll just go ahead. This is a story about how a 1 kilometer asteroid, apparently 1 kilometer is huge, by the way, smashed into Scotland. Okay, so in 2008, scientists from Oxford and Aberdeen University, they near the village of this place called Ullapool, which sits on the coast opposite of the outer Hebrides. I don't really quite know where that is. So they found a debris deposit created by ancient meteor impact dated to 1.2 billion years ago. So, until recently, the precise location of this impact remained a mystery to scientists. But in a paper that was recently released in the Journal of the Geological Society, a team of British researchers, they concluded the crater is located about 15 to 20 kilometers west of the Scottish coastline, right? So, which is kind of pretty cool. So, they actually analyzed broken rock fragments and looked at magnetic particles, okay? And as noted, they basically said, this: the material excavated during a giant meteorite impact is rarely preserved on Earth because it is rapidly eroded. So this is a really exciting discovery. It was purely by chance this one landed in an ancient rift valley where fresh settlement quickly covered the debris to preserve it. The next step would be detailed geophysical survey in our target area of the Minch Basin. That's where the That's where the asteroid is. I mean, that's where the impact is. Minch Basin, M-I-N-C-H. All right. So the timing of this impact is especially significant. Why? Well, obviously, humans wasn't around 1.2 billion years ago. So roughly 1.2 billion years ago, though, it was what's known as the Mesoproterozoic era. How complex. Okay, so the first complex life forms were emerging on Earth, and most of the life on Earth were still aquatic. Aquatic meaning in the oceans, right? So back then, when the Minch meteor struck, by the way, meteor, you guys know the difference between a meteor and an asteroid? Okay, meteor is just an asteroid that entered the Earth's atmosphere, all right? So when the Minch meteor struck, the Scottish landscape was really different. So it pretty much looked like what scientists imagined Mars looked like billions of years ago. So it was semi-arid and with some water on its surface, but not much, right? So the result, yeah, I mean, anyways, so this by studying this, since like I said, like those scientists said, Dr. Kenneth Moore, to be exact, AMOR, the research team, this is pretty rare that these fragments are preserved so well. So we're gonna study it and maybe, learn how to possibly, deflect it. That's from the planetary defense perspective, or at least understand more about it geologically, right? Which is kind of cool. So, anyways. All right, enough about all this stuff. All right, let me let's go to some interesting things, right? What about the okay, so I'm only going to briefly mention this because really there's some other astrobiology / I'm just going to say UFO stuff that I'm more interested in talking about. But first, let's talk a bit about some of the lunar mining concepts that NASA recently awarded. Okay, so NASA has this award. NASA has a bunch of means to award private companies, right? So there's one called NASA Innovative Advanced Concepts, or NIAC contracts, okay? So these it's really interesting. They offer money for theoretical ideas that could take many years to become reality, fruition, right? So a little bit about NIAC. Each project, so NIAC has phase 1, 2, and 3, right? So could be up to $2 million to outline the mission concept, right? So there's two far off ones, 2 NIAC concepts that were awarded to survey lunar craters for astronauts and help identify, mining resources, right? So the first mission concept is called Starlight, and so Starlight is led by William Whitaker. He's a robotics professor at Carnegie Mellon University. And what it is that using high-resolution imagery taken from close-up, Skylight will create 3D models of craters, okay? And these models will then show whether it's safe for a human or a rover to descend into and explore these features, which is pretty cool. The system could also identify ice in the shadows. So, you can figure out, hey, there's water here, right? So it's ice, you can melt it, get water. All right. The other project is called Mini B and is led by Joel Sercel, Joel Sercel. He's the founder and CEO of TransAstra Corporation. So Mini B hopes to develop a way to mine resources from asteroids, which are full of water and minerals, right? Which is kind of cool. I mean, that's interesting. So this project would extract resources through a method known as optical mining. Never heard of that. So optical mining is where you use concentrated sunlight, in the asteroid. So this process will wear away the surface, and it could generate debris that would be then collected into an inflatable bag. Okay. So the team hopes to use this process to generate propellant in space, and that will reduce the need for astronauts to, haul all their fuel. So pretty useful. So each of these study teams gets 2 years of research time to flesh out the design, and then be actually reach a certain level where this idea could be transferred to industry or government for further development implementation, right? So right now this is very theoretical level, but it's really interesting. So, all right, enough about this. What I really want to talk about, as always, is astrobiology, or rather, maybe I just want to talk about aliens. Right. Speaking of aliens, it's really interesting that there's a number of conferences going on right now about UFOs and such. So they say last weekend, so first week of June, there was a contact in the desert. Supposedly the world's largest UFO conference. Gosh, I wish I knew about it. Oh, well. All right. So apparently, oh, well. Anyways, so 3,000 attendees attended Contact in the Desert. And yes, it is Contact in the Desert, guys. And yeah. I mean, come on. Even the U.S. military agreed that there's UFOs and stuff needs to be. Okay, so the conference website, it described itself as, so I have not gone myself. I don't know anybody who went, but you know what? I might reach out to some people who goes, see if I can interview them. That'd be interesting. So anyways, the conference website described itself as a gateway through which attendees can gain knowledge and the most up-to-date research on UFOs, ancient aliens, human origins, crop circles, government disclosure, extraterrestrial visitation, interplanetary living, contact and abduction experiences, and the need to know. Also, hotel buffet. A hotel buffet of the paranormal. Yes. So, 3,000 attendees and more talking about that. All right, so what I'm going to have to do is actually go through the presentations, look it over, and discuss more next time, right? And see if I can get somebody I can interview, all right? So that'd be cool. Hey, but if you missed that, don't worry. Maybe you can attend this one. There's a alien conference, UFO conference at Spruce Pine, North Carolina, all right? Spruce Pine is not really that large, but apparently more UFO sightings have been reported in Mitchell County there than any other county in North Carolina. And what's kind of interesting is that most of the quartz, the mineral used in space telescopes, the tiles that were on NASA space shuttles, and almost anything that requires a microchip here in this country comes from Spruce Pines, which apparently made it a perfect location for the first ever Spruce Pine Alien Conference and Expo. And that is, get it? Spruce Pine Alien Conference and Expo, short for, actually, SPACE. Get it? SPACE is the acronym. All right, so the festival is 7 to 10 p.m. on Friday, June 14th, and 9 a.m. to 8 p.m. on Saturday, June 15th in downtown Spruce Pine. So they expect to draw at least 10,000 people to the area from around the U.S. Wow, that'd be bigger than another one. But anyways, so yeah, I mean this guy. So it's organized by a fellow named Jimmy Henshaw. He was looking for an idea to put his hometown on the map, and he's like, wait a minute, this could be it. So North Carolina, by the way, is one of the top 10 states in the country for UFO sightings, with 2,911 sightings reported in 2018. So, as Henshaw said, it was as if I turned on a fire hose. Stories from folks whose aunt, brother, grandfather, or themselves who had experiences with an alien, UFO, or other unexplained event poured out at a rapid pace. It really surprised me. So, yeah, who knows, right? Okay. Speaking of all this UFO stuff, you might find this actually interesting. There is Airbnb. That's right. I've stayed at Airbnb. I mean, went to Alaska. I did that, right? Save money. You sleep with strangers. You don't sleep with them. Okay, you sleep, where they offer a house or whatever, apartment, whatever. Okay, so apparently there's also like tours you could take with Airbnb, right? And one of them is called Airbnb UFO hunting. That's right. So this guy is offering, yes, you can pay money to do Airbnb UFO hunting. So travel from southern Utah to Nevada, and you will see ghost towns, petroglyphs, and haunted hotels. on the way to paranormal hotspot Area 51. Okay. This is conducted by the founder of Utah's UFO festival. So you will go down, quote unquote, extraterrestrial highway to Area 51, and you would take photos and so forth. So if you want to check it out, you can go, do a Google search, Airbnb UFO hunting, and I guess you can spend a week with the guy as a tour guide and navigate the desert and try to get close to Area 51 without being shot or something. Yes. If you really want a different traveling experience, then go do that. He's also apparently a photographer. I don't know what his name is, but yeah. So, all right. I'm gonna wrap this up by briefly mentioning. Remember how I said we got time? We're talking about climate change a little bit. Well, I want to talk about this book very briefly. So, go read this book if you want to freak yourself out. Let's just say with a dose of possible reality. Then read David Wallace Wells. So David Wallace-Wells book. And he paints a really great dystopian hellscape, I will say, of what would happen. All right. So, and he starts out by saying, "It is, I promise, worse than you think." Okay. This is the first line of his 2017 essay, by the way, but he recently came out with a book. So he paints pretty much a picture of the future, not too distant, I think 2050, where there's famines, there's political chaos, there's economic collapse, there's resource competition, and there's a sun that, quote unquote, cooks us, right? So he turned that essay, he expanded on it, and he has a book called The Uninhabitable, why can't I not say that word? The Uninhabitable Earth, Life After Warming. So, it's kind of, it has a lot of stats. So for instance, it says that we could potentially avoid 150 million excess premature death by the end of the century from air pollution. All right, that's like twice the number of deaths from World War II. If we could limit average global warming to 1.5 degrees Celsius or hold warming at 2 degrees without relying on negative emissions. We're going to be able to do that? I'm not sure, right? Basically, a huge part of it is quite depressing, but the point is that if we don't do anything now, this is what's going to happen, right? So apparently you guys know about all the gigantic wildfires, the hurricanes, all that, right? In California, for instance, last year, wildfires burnt more than 1 million acres. Now imagine 10 times that. Okay, that's what's going to happen. So pretty much every conceivable plane is going to be disaster. So let's hope it doesn't get there. Feel free to read the book and see take your opinion on it. The Uninhabitable Earth, Life After Warming. That's what it's called. Okay, so in any case, yeah. All right. Well, we're drawing it to a close here. We are definitely drawing to close. Oh, look, Dawn Mission. We're drawing to a close here. So I have to say, as always, Action One Media, thank you for hosting this, the space, and doing all the good stuff. All right. So you can follow me at facebook.com/The Shen Show, TheShenShow. Feel free to subscribe me on YouTube as well, youtube.com/u/CAST725. Of course, feel free to follow Action One Media as well. SG2 on Space, episode number 34. And, I have to say this, right? What am I going to say? All right. Look up because you never know what you will see. Yes, you don't have to attend these alien conferences. You can look up anywhere. And who knows what you'll see. I mean, okay, this is a slight aside, but yesterday I looked up and sorry for the anticlimactic moment, but I did not see a UFO. I saw the moon, and it was beautiful, right? So doesn't have to be a weird thing. There's always lots of things in the sky. So look up because you never know what you will see. with that, you guys have a wonderful time, and later.
Action 1. Inspiring action.
Look up, because you never know what you will see. Hi, my name is Shen Ge, and I'm the host of SG2 on Space, the only weekly space show here in Houston, with Action 1 Media Group support every Thursday night. So, my goal here is to educate the public in terms of space science, space flight, physics, astronomy, etc. You know, all that cool jazz. And occasionally about aliens as well. So STEAM education, science, technology, engineering, arts, since that's part of the creative aspect, and mathematics is very important to me. And I feel like Action 1 Media's goal is aligned with mine. So together, we hope to encourage the knowledge and especially the passion and interest in outer space in our Houston community. Tune in to SG2 on Space on Thursdays at 8 p.m. U.S. Central Time. Look up, because you never know what you will see.
Peace, brother Atum Ra, and you tuned in to Action 1 Network.